This is an Australian F-35 fighter jet. When India's Defence Minister Rajat Singh was in Australia last week, he was taken up in a multi-role tanker transport plane to perform a live air-to-air refuelling, just like this. It was intended as a symbol of the two sides' growing interoperability after signing India's first ever refuelling agreement just last year. Here's Australia's Defence Minister and Deputy Prime Minister.
What we are seeing in terms of a deep trust and a strategic alignment is now being expressed in a much deeper operational level of engagement between our two defence forces. The agreement that we've signed in terms of staff talks between our operational commands is hugely significant. I mean, this will really see a much closer operational engagement between our two defence forces, and we're very excited about that.
In fact, the entire visit by Minister Singh represented these two Indo-Pacific partners' significant deepening and expanding maritime security relationship with and beyond the United States. On his landmark visit, the first by an Indian defence minister in more than a decade, a further 3 agreements were signed on submarine search and rescue, information sharing and joint staff talks. What does the Mutual Submarine Pact especially enable both sides to achieve? What does it mean for Australia's Aukus nuclear-powered submarines? And why will China be paying attention? Hello and welcome to Taiwan Talks. I'm Kavat. To discuss these stories and more, we're joined by Tony Hu, former US Department of Defense Senior Director for China, Taiwan, Mongolia, and Sana Hashmi, Taiwan Asia Exchange Foundation Fellow. Tony, Sana, welcome back to Taiwan Talks. Tony, let me start with you. Okay. So let's talk submarines first.
Okay.
Under the MOU, Memorandum of Understanding, India will help maintain, repair, overhaul Australian vessels in the Indian Ocean shipyards. Just to be clear, though, this, as well as a mutual logistics support agreement signed in 2020, they don't mean shared basing. Right?
It's not a shared basing agreement. It's a logistics support agreement that most likely means that if Australians operating in the ocean, if they need fuel, food for their submarines, India will be able to support that. Certainly, this is, I believe, that something that can be implemented right away.
Sana, we heard there from Richard Marles. He talked about that level of trust. What level of interoperability and trust does this demonstrate?
I think a lot. And in fact, if you look at the trajectory of India-Australia relations, I think what is going underappreciated is that this relationship has come a long way, specifically from 2008. And if you look at the trajectory since 2020, 2018, no one would have accepted such level of trust and such level of cooperation that we are seeing at the moment. And I feel that the defense cooperation that is absolutely growing between India and Australia, it's absolutely a meaningful step. So there is a lot of trust and there is a lot of convergence of interest. And then there's this shared objective of maintaining free and open Indo-Pacific. So I would say that the basis of this defense cooperation is regional stability in the Indo-Pacific.
And Tony, we said that the pact is mutual. We only talked about sort of Indian Ocean shipyards servicing, I guess, the Australian vessels. But what are the combined benefits for both India and Australia in terms of, submarine posture, anti-submarine warfare?
Yes, the entire region, if you look at the area that's covered by the Australians and the Indians from the Indian Ocean to South Pacific, these are all very important area to the stability of the Indo-Pacific region. So India and Australia actually have some platforms that's similar, that including the P8.
So the P8 is a Poseidon...
Poseidon anti-submarine warfare aircraft, and both countries operates it, and both countries operates the KC-30, the Airbus air refuelers, which means they can mutually refuel each other's aircraft.
This is what we showed at the top of the show.
Right, and that can sustain the aircraft and maintain their loiter time, the surveillance time. So
does it extend the operational reach, Tony?
Absolutely,
Yeah.
That's the main thing. It extends operational reach and the ability to maintain tracking. If they found a PRC submarines, you don't want to lose track because you have to go back and get gas. You can maintain on station and have a tanker come air refuel. And you can share that information with each other so that if Indian aircraft have to take over from the Australian aircraft for monitoring, then they can do that.
Sana, we heard Tony talk about, from the Indian Ocean to the South Pacific. Is there emerging this sort of idea of a unified theatre, Indian Ocean and the Pacific?
I think so. I think it's just conflicts are not limited to just one theater. We have seen in the case of Ukraine conflict, we have seen what's happening in the South China Sea will impact India, will impact the countries in the region. And I think what India and Australia are doing is just a part of the process, that how do we become and present deterrence, present a unified front for the threat that is actually for both the countries, for Australia, for India, for a lot of other countries in the region. So absolutely, I think India is an important country in the Indian Ocean region. India is looking for partners to strengthen maritime cooperation within the Indian Ocean region and beyond. And I feel Australia was also cognizant of the fact that Pacific is something that Australia has to pay attention to. Also in the Pacific Island, which is Australia's backyard. So we do need each other, and I think that's the crux of India-Australia defense partnership that is only evolving.
And Tony, what benefits does this give in particular to Australia's Aukus submarines if this deal does continue under the Trump administration, in 2030, I believe it is? Australia will have these nuclear-powered Aukus submarines. What does that mean for these submarines in the Indian Ocean? And also I want to highlight that there was talk of there was an India sort of hidden base, the Rambili Project Varsha, where you can actually enter, but you have to go under the water to enter that.
Absolutely. The Aukus is a nuclear powered submarine, so it has much longer range than the current Collins class. Collins class, once they get to area operations such as in South China Sea, then they're going to run out of gas if they don't go home right away. Okay, in this case, with the nuclear power submarine under AUKUS, then Australian submarines actually continue to operate, but the only thing they lack is food. So they can stop at India and pick up the food and continue to operate underwater. So this absolutely extends the operational time of the Australian submarine and be able to patrol in much larger area than what they can do right now.
And so when you compare what China's submarines will be able to do, does it give the Australian, the Indian submarines, they're not kind of limited by geography, is that correct, through this kind of pact?
That's precisely right. Now, China does have some nuclear power submarine, but most of their submarines are still diesel powered. So their range is limited. They will be in South China Sea and of course Taiwan Strait and East Sea near Japan. And Australia's, when they get this type of submarine, they will be able to support Indo-Pacific operations throughout the region.
Within the Indian Ocean region, of course, is the very key choke point of the Malacca Strait. What do you think will be the role of, say, Australian submarines helping Indian submarines around the Malacca Strait in the Indian Ocean region?
I think first we have to look at what is the use right now, and then in the time of crisis, what it could do. So right now I feel, and we have also talked about, that there is this idea that there will be interoperability coordination, then joint coordination, and also India and both Australia, they're learning from each other's practices and weapon system and technology. So when AUKUS happened, one of the criticism in India was that the technology, the submarines are being given to Australia, but the technology is not being given to India. So, of course, I feel that there is lack of trust between India and the Western countries, primarily the US. But now with this agreement, MOU with Australia, I think India is getting access to the technology as well. And I feel it's about deterring any crisis in the Malacca Strait, in the Taiwan Strait, in a Taiwan contingency. So I think first we talk about what India and Australia are going to do in the time of crisis in any of the theater. We have to talk about that they are actually presenting a united front right now. They are providing an effort to deter so that there is no crisis. So I don't think as of now countries are actually thinking about their role in a crisis. That
you don't think that they are?
I think they might be, but I think the idea is to perhaps advance, strengthen deterrence, because I don't think that any country is willing to fight, and specifically a conflict that involves China, that involves a maritime conflict. But also before that, I would like to point out that India is one country that has been focusing on strengthening its maritime capabilities and maritime cooperation. So this MOU or the naval exercises that we are seeing that has been happening from India's side at least for the past 20-25 years. So I would say that India is preparing for a conflict, but of course the holistic picture right now is that how do we deter China? Because China is the only country that could trigger a maritime conflict in the region.
So in terms of that deterrence signaling, Tony, briefly, do you think that we will see, as a result of these pacts, a lot more Australian submarines, or maybe we won't see them, but there will be the presence of a lot more Australian submarines in the Indian Ocean and likewise Indian submarines into the Pacific, or is that not what we see?
Actually, I'm not sure, because India has a very strong capability in maintaining the sphere of control around the Indian Ocean. So does it require Australian presence there? I don't see it. But Australia's ability to power project with the new submarine certainly enhances the kind of deterrence that Sana mentioned, because truly right now is to deter China.
Right.
And that is the key. That is the key for all the regional exercises that's been done through Australia and United States and Japan. All these joint exercises are mainly to deter China, and now that India becoming more involved, it's a good thing.
Okay. Now, Sana, Peter Khalil, Australia's Assistant Minister for Defence, in his opening remarks at a business roundtable to Minister Singh, said, "Let us build our Dosti, our foundation of trust and friendship." So why is it that India and Australia are close Dosts? Why do their defence forces, as Miles has said, need to work more closely?
I think that's a very important statement, because when India calls a country a friend, that actually means that India is looking to strengthen defense ties. And India doesn't really look for exercises with countries that it does not really have good relations. For example, India has suspended army military exercise with China since 2020. But then India has the largest longest military exercise going on with Singapore, and that's one of the important partners in the Southeast Asian region. So when Defence Minister of India called Australia a friend, a partner, that actually means that there is this level of trust, there is this idea that we have shared objectives, shared interest and common concerns, and we have to work together. So from India's side, I would say that there is this convergence and this idea that Australia could be an important partner in dealing with common threats. And also, it's just not symbolic. It's actually about advancing the interoperability coordination, and also how do we act together? How do we act together towards a common adversary? And I think now specifically with the US president out of the scene, not talking about the Indo-Pacific as much, now we are seeing that the regional partnerships are coming out on surface, and now they have to prove that they are there to perhaps secure the partnership, the regional security in the Indo-Pacific. But from Australia's perspective, I would say there is also this confidence in India that India could actually contribute towards high military coordination to preserve the regional stability. So I think it's mutually beneficial, and if I may cite Chinese phrase, win-win cooperation for both Australia and India.
Okay, so a high level of trust and confidence. Tony, India also joined Australia's Talisman Sabre 2025 for the very first time, upgrading from observer, being an observer. How major was that?
That is major. You know, Talisman Sabre, 19 countries, 43,000 people. Why do they join? These countries join to learn about coalition warfare. They join to learn command and control in a multinational environment. India hasn't had that opportunity to do that, and now they do under Talisman Sabre, because in a multinational command and control environment, operation is not so simple. You have to be synchronized so that you avoid stepping on each other and understand certain terms. What does it mean? Everyone understands this means this. And so having India join, I think it's wonderful, because the role of India in regional security will only grow in the future. It will expand.
So Tony, I'll stay on you for the next question. I want to discuss the other pacts. As we talked about, there were 3 in total. So there's also joint staff talks, as well as information sharing. And why do you think these are perhaps even more important?
So this type of talk can identify the common threat so that it can jointly determine how to counter that threat. So this type of talks are very important because it drives everything underneath it, the operational level cooperation, because you want those operations to support what the strategy is. So you don't, like I said, everybody operating together, so there's synergy in deterrence. So this type of talk is the first step to identify a common threat and common process toward countering those threats.
And so is there a way to think about it, Sana, as perhaps that information sharing, which we understand is maybe enhanced maritime domain awareness, contributing to a common operating picture, that can be seen as maybe technical, sort of the software side of things, whereas this joint staff talks is about the human side.
I would like to add to what Colonel Tony also said, that it's absolutely a meaningful step that how India is participating in Talisman exercise. Why? Because, of course, there is a shared adversary, and I'll come to that later, but also the relationship stands on its own foot, and that's becoming a very robust relationship. So, Talisman is an exercise that is only available to Australia's close defense partners, US and other partners. So being India a part of it actually means that how countries in the region are viewing India. That no matter what is happening between India and US, the position, the geographical location, and also the status of India remain the same. We need India to counterbalance China. So that, of course, it stands on its own foot. It's very important, just as bilateral relationship. But now coming to the shared adversary part, very important. Now coming to the other agreements, specifically the joint staff talks. What India does is, and of course, I think not just India, a lot of countries also are getting cognizant of this fact that now this is the age of multi-domain warfare. It's just not going to be about air warfare or naval warfare. So of course, India is focusing on its maritime cooperation and capabilities, but then how do you talk about land, air, sea, and then naval, cyber warfare? And I think this is a part of that. So of course, for the very first time, we are seeing this heightened level of cooperation between India and the regional countries like Australia and Japan as well. But apart from that, we are seeing that there is this realization of shared strategic assessment, and information sharing is a very important part of that. As in, you could go and talk about stuff, but then how do you focus on better coordination and joint staff talks, both at military level as well as the diplomatic level. Diplomatic talks have been going on for a long time. India has had a foreign consultation office mechanism, then foreign minister talk, and now 2+2 and then Quad. India has a number of mechanisms with Australia and also a number of trilaterals with Australia and Indonesia. So I feel now this civil diplomatic relation is becoming more strengthened through military diplomatic cooperation. But I do feel that the emphasis on joint staff communication as well as information sharing is so important in case there is a crisis. So when I said, I quickly finish my argument, that when I said that there is, no one wants to fight, but they're preparing, and no country can prepare alone. And this is what India and Australia and other countries are doing.
Right. Yeah, a very good point there. Tony, so it's been 5 years since the two sides signed their comprehensive strategic partnership, as well as that mutual logistics support arrangement. Do you agree with Richard Marles, the Defence Minister for Australia, who said that, that the two countries are finally operationalising their strategic alignment in terms of the practical cooperation?
Absolutely, because this type of cooperation, you can put it on paper, then you need to develop the process. Just like if your airplane comes and I give you gas, how do you pay for it? There are details to be worked out. There are procedures to be written so that both sides follow that process. So it's operationalizing right now. And it's good to see, because you don't want to wait until when you need to do it and you don't have a process in place, and even though you want to do it, you don't know how to do it. So this is very important. And this type of agreement actually is the next step. It's going toward operationalize, make sure truly interoperable, sharing of resources and information, and have that process in place and start to do it day to day. And so that in case a conflict happens, you already have the thing engaged, in place, and information are flowing.
Okay. And Sana, there was an FT leak a couple of months ago where US Undersecretary of Defense policy, Elbridge Colby had asked both Australia and Japan what would their role be in a Taiwan crisis, and it appears that they did not actually say what that role would be. Do you think that at some stage, especially given the threats, the increasing aggression of China, that the political people do need to have this discussion within their own governments as to what they may do?
I think it's already happening. Countries are talking about what their role could be in a Taiwan contingency. They might not be talking to each other, but my hunch is they're of course talking to each other. And I feel that, first of all, I would say that US, instead of asking other countries first, it should be more clear of what role it is going to play. Because under Donald Trump, we are not sure what US role is going to be in the Indo-Pacific in a Taiwan contingency. No country would want to see Taiwan under China's control. No country would want to see an invasion where they have to come up with a statement. But we all know that these countries have this idea that Taiwan should not be under China's control. And I think that this is just not about their interest, because there is interconnectedness of all the conflicts, of all the crises and theaters. So I think US should first clarify its own role and perhaps play a role where these countries are more motivated and encouraged to play a role.
Okay, Tony, you want to jump in?
Yes, I think it's very clear these countries know what the role they play in military terms, because if you look at last year's Rim Pact exercise, so one of the deputy commander of the Joint Task Force was Japanese, and the other one was Australian. And these forces that joined the Rim Pact, the Japanese, Australian, Chilean, everybody else, all play a role. And the Rim Pact exercise scenario is Western Pacific security. So there's only one threat in the whole region, which is China. So I think militarily they know what role they play. In other areas, I think that's yet to be discussed as far as political and diplomatic area. But I think these countries know, but it's not appropriate for them to comment at this time, just like during Rim Pact exercise, we say this exercise is not pointed at anybody, right? But truly, people know.
Yeah, not publicly, but definitely
privately they know.
Yeah. And Tony, just staying on you a bit. So, what do you think about Australia and India coming together? That this represents a kind of non-US security network emerging, one that's different to a spoke-to-spoke arrangement under Biden. Do you believe it's different, or is it just the same?
I think it's different because under the current administration, the America First policy, you see a slight retrenchment of the United States in some of the regions. And certainly every country has to worry about their own national interests. And the peace and stability of the Indo-Pacific is important to both India and Australia, Japan, and the Philippines. So you see separate arrangements for now because they need to hang on until the next administration come over in the United States, whether that changes, where U.S. gets re-engaged. But for now, I think just for their own national security, they need to think about what to do in case the United States doesn't get actively involved. So yes, I believe they're taking actions for their own national security purpose to link up with other partners to make sure that the region remains safe and be able to deter China.
And so on a final question, so Australia and India, both Quad members, that is India, Australia, Japan, and the US. How much of a boost does India's and Australia's bilateral security relationship, this strengthening that we've seen, how much does it actually boost Quad into more of a security partnership rather than just a dialogue?
I think it's a very important question first, that I would also like to add to what Tony said, that countries in the region are actually envisaging a situation where the US might not be present, might not be the primary security guarantor, and they have to step up for themselves. So I think this is what is happening right now. So the over-reliance on the US, we are seeing is decreasing day by day. But then about Quad, it does, and also this is one of the reasons why we are seeing this greater emphasis on bilateral defense cooperation. This was happening for the past 10 years, but I feel the intensity and the urgency is very much there. About the Quad, so that's the first aspect. But it doesn't mean the Quad will be weakened. I think Trump, we have to wait and watch if he's going to pay any attention to the Quadrilateral Dialogue, because his attention is divided and distracted and primarily on the crisis management peace negotiations for different countries. But I do believe that Quad is not going to be weakened, and this is definitely going to be one of the primary mechanisms for regional stability.
Okay.
Well, I think if you look at Quad right now, Japan's got North Asia covered, Australia got South Pacific covered, and U.S. through its ally, Philippines, got the South China Sea covered, and India has Indian Ocean. Now, these are all critical areas for Indo-Pacific security. And if China does something foolish, it's important that India gets involved and be able to also control some of the sea lane of communication that China depends on for its survival through Indian Ocean. So India's participation and interest in the regional security actually, I believe, boosts the Quad.
Significantly, yes.
Yes.
Okay, we're going to have to wrap up there. Thank you so much, Tony Hu and Sana Hashmi, for joining Taiwan Talks today. If you liked our show, please search for us on YouTube, give us a thumbs up and hit subscribe to our channel. Thank you for watching the show today. Stay safe and see you next time.